All right, we will go ahead and get started. I realized that last week we didn't really go over what the various assignments for the summer are and what they're going to look like. And uh, this summer is a little, I did speak about this and then didn't get to it, so I apologize. But this summer is a little different, having more people in varied settings. And like I said last week, I do want to make sure that that everyone has an assignment that is meaningful and functional to your current setting. And that is especially for the school people who maybe only have a couple weeks of summer session, or the ed diags that are here. That's going to look different for you guys than it does for other people. So or for the more clinical group. So let me talk to the more clinical group, and then maybe afterwards, especially since we have 4 of you on right now, you guys can hang out for a second and we can kind of work together to figure out what we want to show for the rest of the summer, okay? So for the clinical people, or for those who are going to be teaching in, I want to say, like a summer school that's going to go into July, the assignments that are posted are what we want to see. So having, following the what's in Moodle in terms of the objectives and the graphs and the TPRAs and learning criterion and all of that kind of stuff, like we want to be able to follow those weekly. And build on those as the summer goes on. So that should be pretty self-explanatory in terms of what you are looking for. Today, what I'm going to spend some time doing is actually going through with Excel and building some learning criterion graphs, some STO graphs, some line graphs, some bar graphs, some things that you can use long term to help keep track of that sort of measurement that hopefully serves as a tool for you in the future. For the ed diag people, for those that are using other types of assessments, I'm going to do some bar graph stuff as well, that I hope is useful for you guys. Heather, Rianne, when you're thinking of like LCAR graphs and those, filling in things that fill in over time, that's something else that I hope is going to be useful for you. So by the end of today, we should have some good graphical tools that we can use to display some of our assessment and measurement data. Okay, sound good? All right. Let's see. All right. So again, clinical guys, each of the graph assignments has their own kind of description to them. So the type of graph that I want to see is going to change from week to week. But again, these should be things that are already happening in your settings. You shouldn't have to be creating these types of things from whole cloth. So if you see anything that is not typical to what you do on a day-by-day basis, let me know. And we can either adjust or find a way for you to collect those data. But none of the projects should be creating from scratch. If something is, let me know. So a bunch of you got the first graphing assignment in, which is great. Just baseline of working on some assessing different programs. There's the reinforcement survey. Some of you guys got those in, which is really good. And then identification of objectives that you are going to be working on through the LCAR over the course of the summer. Again, that should be pretty straightforward. For this week, we are adding a weekly learning criterion graph again, which we're going to go over in this class. And then the TPRA, the TPRA graph, as well as uploading a TPRA that you have had completed on you. And then these or some iteration of this are going to be the weekly assignments as we go on. Okay. So Heather, Rianne, Isaac, to some degree, does that all fits in with where y'all are at and checking and doing good? Yeah.
Yes, I do have a few questions though, but I don't want to I can always ask them later if I need to.
No, this is, go ahead. I'll let you know
Okay.
if it's a later question or if it's good for the whole group.
The TPRA thing, does it have to be a complete TPRA or can it be like bits and pieces of TPRAs?
Preference is always going to be for complete TPRAs. If there is a ongoing reason why that's not going to occur, then that's a specific that you and I can definitely talk about. I know with the role that you're in, sitting down with Paula or Alicia for a 20-minute period with you guys with a kid is harder. But yeah.
Okay. And then as far as objectives that we're implementing for continuous data collection on, my client does have naming. I don't know if you looked at my PowerPoint.
I have not yet.
Okay, he has naming, so he runs through programs fairly quickly once he receives that correction procedure.
Yep.
To start a new objective and report data on that once he meets criterion.
So look at it as more of like and this would go for a lot of the school-based ideas as well. Look at it as more of an objective strand. So if you're in a math sequence, if you're in a reading sequence, that can be your ongoing data. It's more curricular than like 20 learning objective. All right, cool. Okay. Any other questions about that? School guys will get some time together afterwards and get you guys in a good spot. Okay. Yeah, Rianne.
Let's see. Okay. So I have an assessment with a new kiddo this Wednesday that I wanted to do something like me and Rissa. So we had gotten together and stuff, and I've put together like a little LCAR probe sheet and whatnot. And she's gonna do an observing response screening. I'm gonna help her with that.
Great.
And is it okay if she does the TPRA or me? Like, or would I have to? That's okay. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for over the course of the summer, I would love it if you can get a couple from her, a couple from Jenny.
Yeah.
Just so we can see, but yes, that's totally fine.
I just didn't know like what credentials would be needed for the TPRA purposes. And for sure, like I'm gonna have Jenny do TPRAs with me, but okay.
I would say that for the purpose of this class, as close as she is to graduation, even as close as you are to graduation, that's still okay. Do know that like her TPRAs might not count for your rank or something like that.
Yes.
But for the class, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, great. Any other questions so far? Isaac, good to see you. Been a couple weeks since we last saw. All right, awesome. Okay, so then let's switch over to Excel, and I encourage each of you to pull up your own Excel or numbers or Google Sheets or whatever it is that you use, and kind of follow along as we go. There is a Learn Units to Criterion document that is on Moodle right now, and we're kind of going to go or follow through some of the different components that I've built on there. Last year was the first year that I really did this, and everyone found it to be really helpful. So I wanted to try and replicate that to some degree. What I have found to be one of the biggest hurdles in tracking any sort of data electronically, whether it's assessment data, whether it's Learn Unit data, whether it's Learn Units to Criterion or objectives met over time, is just the lack of confidence for people in something like Excel. and the ability to have something that is set up for the long run, to minimize the amount of work and effort that you need to do to maintain any progress monitoring type system. So that's what I'm setting out to do. Excuse me. So before I start, I've worked with just about everyone here multiple times, but give me a sense of each of your, to the degree that you're willing to share, each of your comfort and confidence levels with Excel. How many of you would say that you are very comfortable with Excel making, let's do it this way. How many of you are comfortable making line graphs in Excel? All right, good. How many of you are comfortable making bar graphs in Excel? All right, great. We're off to a good start. How many of you are comfortable, I'm going to use this word and hopefully it's meaningful, making either of those dynamically in Excel, meaning that as you add information, the tables update automatically? We go to 0 pretty quickly. Okay, so that's a good starting point. How many of you are comfortable with having like summary tables in Excel, where you have lots of data in different places and then one table to put it all together? All right, we got one. All right, so good. Let's start at those. Yeah, Cece.
Good question. So separate graphs and then one graph that shows the separate graphs. Is that what you mean?
Kind of. So let's we're gonna get there anyway. So let's not even worry about parsing through that question. Okay, awesome. So what we are going to do then is we will use a and let me ask this: how many of you are comfortable graphing multiple data points, or have any of you graphed multiple data points on different axes in Excel? Blank stares. One. Okay, a little bit. All right, cool. So what we are going to do is set up a basic line graph and then expand out from there into what basically turns into a database that is self-sustaining over the course of the year. We will use learn units, objectives, and learn units to criterion over the course of a week as the context for doing this, but the applicability of this extends well beyond those data points. All right. So any sort of progress monitoring would be able to fit in to this type of graph. Okay. Does everyone have their spreadsheet system pulled up? Yeah. Okay. So to start, one of the things that I really believe is critical in setting up a successful database is ensuring that the database itself is easy to follow visually. That means using borders, using shading, using sizing of columns and rows, making it so that you can actually really visually understand the data that are in front of you. If you don't use those different components, then you're going to be just as lost as if you just throw your data in Excel, which is what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to spend the time formatting and putting in the borders and doing all of the shading and stuff as we go, not because I think it looks pretty, but because I think it's actually critical, really critical to making a successful database. All right. Yeah, keep swallowing the wrong way. Okay, so what if we are looking at learn units to criterion, weekly learn units to criterion that we want to set up for a school year? what are the data points that we are going to need to work with? Well, for starters, we're going to need our weeks, right? Can you guys all read that? Is that of appropriate size? Could it be a little bit bigger? Is that better? Yep, okay. So we have our week numbers. We have total learn units. We might even, with our week numbers, we might have a date range, right? We have STOs met. We have learn units to criterion. And we might have, let's say, cumulative objectives. Are there any other data points that we might need to grab all of this information to get a learn unit and our learn units to criterion and cumulative objective graph? That's everything that I think of. We'll go with that. Okay, cool. So week 1, week 2. How many weeks is a school year? 44, 42? Something along those lines? We'll see. So let's say 8/1/21 is our first week. 8/7/21, let's say it's the Friday on our first week. I'm going to do that plus 7 to get the next Friday. All right. So what I have already are 2 series. I'm going to use those 2 series to help me start to set up my database. So I grab my week 1 and week 2. I grab my 8/7 and 8/14. Anyone know how to use this little square in the bottom? Okay. Grab the square and drag it down. Oh, it didn't work. No. Ah, that's why. Equals that plus 7. You have to do it the 3rd time. Undo, undo, undo. I'll do it one more time. Sorry. For week 3, do equals this plus 7. Let's go ahead and put week 3 in there. Now I can grab and drag. All right. So I drag this little square all the way down. Keep going. Call May 28th our last day. So I have the week numbers, I have the dates of all my Fridays set to go. Okay. Total learn units. I'm going to be entering those data. I'm going to put some dummy data in there now. STOs met. I'm going to be entering those data because those are going to be my raw data inputs. Learn units to criterion is going to be a formula of learn units divided by STOs met. Right? That formula I'm going to drag all the way down. So as I enter data here, my learn units to criterion are automatically going to update. All right. cumulative objectives is also going to be a formula. Week 1 is just the total from week 1. But week 2 is the total from week 1 plus the total, or week 2 plus the total from week 1. Now that I have this formula, again, I can drag that all the way down. All right, so far so good? Okay, so what I have here, all of this so far is populated. The only thing that I am filling out are these two totals, or these two boxes. So I like when I'm making these types of databases, I like to make it really clear where the data that I need to enter goes, and in some sort of prompted way. All right. So now I'm going to make the rest of everything look a little bit nicer. And when we zoom out to our full picture, I start to have a table that is easy enough to work with. So here, what I see is on a weekly basis, I'm going to add my total earn units and my number of STOs, and everything else will calculate automatically. All right, sound good? Okay. Now, something that I started playing around with a little bit this year, which I really, really like. I bring these over. So I'm going to do the exact same type of thing. However, I'm going to select my heading rows plus one more line. I'm going to go to Insert, Table. This pops up. Here's the data for your table. So it's the area that I selected. I'm just going to click My Table Has Headers. Ah. There we go. All right. So from here, put in the same type of information. But what happens, and I'm going to have to work on this, well, let's see, this isn't going to work quite the same. But if I put week 2 here, anywhere there's a formula, it's automatically going to copy it down. All right. So, this isn't going to work. Curious. Yeah. It's not going to work quite the same for the table because of how these first initial lines had different formulas than below. But if your formula, like here, is the same all the way, then as you create new rows, the table automatically expands. I'm looking for new ways to do this because I can make graphs that are defined by these tables that really are dynamic to anything and everything you do. It's not working as I was hoping to. I'm going to delete this so it doesn't confuse us all. So I apologize about that. But that's something else that I'm starting to play around with a little bit. All right. Sorry for that detour. Okay. So we have our general graph. Put some fake data in here. Now, our graph that we are looking for is going to be learn units to criterion and cumulative objectives. Sorry, let me make it bigger again. So since we have this table set up, I'm going to select all of the data down. Going to do our graph. So we're going to start with a line graph that we're familiar with. Going to move it to its own sheet. We have a graph that looks pretty straightforward, right? Okay. However, this axis, while it's appropriate for one data path, is not for the other, right? This axis of 700 is no good for our cumulative objectives. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select my data path for cumulative objectives. I'm going to go to, it's different, they change it on every version of Excel, unfortunately. Add chart element, axes. For here, it's more axis options. Let's see. Uh-oh, did I lose it? No. There we go. So all I did actually there was right click and select format data series and go to secondary axis. So that one, you may have to look for a little bit. On my Excel at home, it's in a different place, and previous Excel's in a different place. But what we're looking for is this ability to put a data series on a secondary axis. So what you see here is this right side, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. That is for our cumulative objectives. The 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, that is for our learn units to criterion. All right. And now from here, I can format each axis as I see fit. So maybe I want this to go to 100. Maybe I want this to go to 1,000. And I'm off and running. Okay. Maybe I don't want a line graph for my learning to criterion because they're weekly. Maybe I decide that I want to change that to a column graph. So I have a column graph for learning to criterion, and I have a line graph for cumulative objectives. As soon as they are on separate axes, it becomes much easier to manipulate each one of those data series independently. All right. Any questions about that? I know that demo was a little clunky. All right, so this becomes my summary graph. This is what I'm looking for all my kids. This, however, is my summary data. And what we want to try and get to is having this, because we know that the data that are going in here are not coming from one kid or one place, but rather they are the culmination of all the kids that I have in my classes, all the kids that I'm working with. So I want to be able to enter data one time for each data point and have everything take care of itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this, let's say I have 5 kids. Student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, and student 5. What we should see is that this table is going to look the same for every single kid, right? Every kid is going to have total learning units. Every kid is going to have total STOs, their own learning criterion, and their own cumulative objectives, okay? So I'm just going to copy this whole thing onto all 5 of these charts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. When you are at the bottom, if you select your first student and then hold down Shift and select your last student, it will control all 5 graphs in the exact same way. So in this situation, I just made all the columns bigger. It did that on all 5 charts. So when you're updating something, you don't have to update each one individually. You can update the group as a whole, okay? So now for my summary data, I want this total learn units to be this cell for all 5 students, okay? So there's 2 ways I can do that. One is easier but clunkier. One is a little harder, but it sets up for the long term. So I'm going to make these formulas into formulas. Very simply, I'm going to hit equals one time. Click on student 1. Click on this cell, that same cell, plus student 2, plus student 3, student 4, student 5. I hit enter. I have a formula there. So now when I go here and I hit 500 learning units for student 1, 300 learning units for student 2, 400, 546, and 726. I have my total. So as I update each student, the summary sheet is going to update automatically, and the graph, once I have data in here, is going to update automatically as well. Now we're going to go back and use our handy dandy little square. I want the exact same formula to apply in the next cell over. And I want all of those formulas to apply all the way down. I now have a graph that will update these 2 data points automatically for the whole year. All right. So when I put 10 in here, 5, 14, 17, and 25. I have my learning criterion for the week for all kids, cumulative objectives, and my graph. Okay. Now, and I'm going to do something slightly different. And I'll put the formula, well, I'll put the sheet up at the top. But let's say I wanted to add another kid. I would have to, where'd it go? Sheet 7, student 6, and I would have to do the whole process once again. All right, let's say you get a kid in the middle of the year. One thing that, and I would have to update all of these formulas. One thing that you can do is a sum formula. All right, so a sum formula is going to sum across all the cells that you tell it to sum across, which makes sense, but you can do that across different sheets. Okay, so I can say to sum student 1 C2, then I put colon student 5 C2, and of course it didn't work. Of course not. No. Eating my own words here. There's that. Ah, that's what it is. Make sure this is. Oh, it's not working. I apologize, guys. We'll start with there. I'm gonna get that formula and place it out there for you. But what this would allow to do is sum across all of the charts between these sheets. So if you wanted to do add a new student, all you would have to do is add within in between. So instead of adding someone on the end, you would be able to just put it in the middle and it would be able to sum up. I feel embarrassed that that didn't work for you guys here, but I will get that for you, okay? So through this, we should have a self-sustaining database for all of any sort of progress monitoring data that needs to be looked at across all of our different students across the year, okay? Is that a helpful tool for anyone? Definitely in the clinical settings, that has value. In the school settings, obviously, where you're calculating learning criterion, where you're summing things up across across weeks, across students, that should be able to be helpful. For ed diags, it's a little different. You're looking more at like a totality within an individual assessment than across any weeks, right? Or across multiple students. So when you look at this, your interest in a summary graph isn't going to be across students from week to week, but maybe multiple students looking at like progress monitoring data from time to time to time, right? So we might want to see what are class-wide DIBEL scores for all students across, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, something along those lines. Yeah. All right. That one takes a little less maintenance over time. One single table with student 1, student 2, so on and so forth, Q1, Q2, like that. That creates all of the information that you're really looking for, right? You don't typically have, yeah, Cece.
Oh, thank you, Doc. Yes, that's really cool, Dr. Shan, man. Boy, that saves on time, but I'm wondering, like, for practice sake, is it possible to send a template where
It's already on Moodle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So where I could plug numbers in and it would automatically calculate and oh, okay, thank you, Dr. Shaman. I didn't
no, it's fine. And I'm actually I'm going to get you that sum formula because it's so much more useful than the adding up the individual sheets. And I'll put that in as an example on that template as well. Okay. All right. So bar graphs, the thing that I guess annoys me with bar graphs, if anything, is how to effectively show progress within the bar graph over time, right? I feel like, and if you use bar graphs regularly, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we typically end up with is something very something, you know, student name, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, maybe we had 10 of whatever we're measuring here, 15, 18. And this becomes our bar graph, right? So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. Yeah? Is that pretty standard? So where this gets hard or inefficient is if we want to be able to show many students or many domains or a wider set of data beyond something along those lines. So like if I have student 1, student 2, student 3, and I start trying to put this into a bar graph, it's going to get really big and unusable pretty quickly. And one way to start to address that is to have each individual be their own bar, with each quarter being or each data point being a data point within the bar. All right. And what the graph to do that is a stacked bar graph. All right. With that where the x-axis is students. So this shows student 1 at quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, student 2, student 3. And that way your bar, your axis, your graph is as big as however many students you have. The benefit, the bigger benefit, I think, to here in terms of data entry is now we can start to look at specifically how many objectives or, sorry, Allison, I see you leaning in. How many objectives were met within an individual time frame, as opposed to the overall total and having to figure that out. So here I want to see They met 5 objectives in quarter 2. They met 3 objectives in quarter 3. This is 8 and 5, 8 and 2. This actually represents the gains that we see. So the stacked bar graph does some automatic work for us. All right. The real value here to me is, I know I'm going to have a Q4, but I have a total. And that's knowing how that we have a way to show what is this all out of. So let's say there are 30 objectives total that are measurable within this assessment. So I'm going to say that my total is 30 minus the sum of what I have over here. All right. You'll see where this is going to go in a second. So now I select everything. I go to Insert Chart, a stacked column. I need to switch my data so that my students are on the bottom, like this. So far, so good, right? Now I'm going to take this data point, this total data point. I'm going to format it so that the inside is white. I'll probably make it so that my border is black. So what I have now is an unshaded part for what is left to be completed. For each student, as I add, let's see if as I delete data, I have unshaded pieces for my whole thing. As I add data, the shading gets smaller and smaller. So when you're thinking LCAR graphs, when you're thinking any sort of mastery-based assessment where there are specific skills that are to be met, this will allow you, can't go negative, to show that in what I think to be a meaningful way.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you have a completed one like this, like the format for LCAR? We have one, but it doesn't create the stacked bars like this. It's like a cumulative bar
I
thing.
did at one point.
Yes.
I don't know where it got put to, but I definitely did it.
I asked about it today, and the one that we have is a cumulative bar graph, and I've always seen it as a stacked. So, and I just didn't know how to create it into this.
Now you do. There you go. But yes, Heather, I have done that before, but let's touch base and let's work on creating one that works for you guys. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of progress monitoring, I think this is a really nice way of showing progress throughout a year. Again, this is something that you can set up for any type of assessment over the course of the year. I don't know. I like this one. Any thoughts on this type of graph? I know this works extremely well for a skills-based assessment like the LCAR. But there are definitely other applications beyond that as well.
I like this one as a teacher. I think I might use this one in some way.
Good. Isaac, what have you been able to use any sort of like database graphs like this in your class?
I do have, I mean, I have all the data. I would just have to put it together into a graph like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like the learning literacy criterion and the number of objectives that were mastered. But once again, all my objectives are year-long objectives with the IEPs, and so obviously some of my LTOs they look a little bit different than in the
And I think in that situation where you're talking about like an annual assessment, I think this type of graph would be very effective. You know, objectives met, IEP objectives met. This could totally work for something like this. Obviously, you know, maybe you're not doing student by student, but maybe you're doing domain by domain, and objectives met throughout the quarter as a means for communicating that to the parents. All right, cool, good. Any other thoughts or questions?
Oh, grades. I could use this for grades.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I when I was in the classroom, I was really fortunate to be exposed, for lack of a better word, to a district that didn't have an ABC grading system. We used a continuum. So you were given the K through 6 continuum, and then there was a 7 through 12 continuum. And you checked off skills as you went, progressing, complete, needs improvement, that kind of stuff. But this type of graph was what we showed our parents where they are within each continuum, how many objectives were met per we could break it down to a quarter or a semester based system, but it was really done to show year over year what kind of progress had been made. And I loved it. It was super easy for my parents to understand. I don't know. I liked it a lot. I think, yeah, go ahead.
One more question. So what about a comparative of grades and attendance? Could there be a parallel column for student one that would compare grades and then attendance?
Yeah, absolutely. So in something like that, let's see, the best way to do that, you would end up with these like 2 data points, right? Trying to think if this will work the way I want it to. So if I had like, you know, let's do days present, 50, 45, 30, 50. I don't even know what that, and 75, that's close. Let's say we had a 180 day. So the same concept, but now, what I was hoping to be able to do is just put this on its own axis. Excuse me, its own axis, but I'm not sure I can do it that way. So the problem here is that the range of the scale is totally off, right? I wonder if we didn't do it by student. So if we said objectives, attendance, I look at it this way. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, what I really want Doesn't look like it's letting me do it. I'll work on that, Susie. But that's how we would do it, right? You know? I'll think about that. But you could, let's say the axis issue wasn't a problem. Let's say these were, maybe we're doing absences. I'll delete the total from there. We go like that. So here I can have this show. So if I do absences, right? Student 1, objectives, absences. Student 2, it would be the same thing. Student 3. Oh, there it is. 8. Okay. There we go. Right, so we can have those multiple data points for each student on that one graph. All right. Cool. So this is not in that learning to criterion workbook, but I'll put that in there for you guys, as well as that other formula. And I'll, you know, as you're doing your learning to criterion graphs and setting up your objectives, start to use these types of start to play around with this type of database to help you keep track of things long term. Like I said before, you know, setting this type of thing up to be easy and manageable throughout the course of the year is a major, you know, roadblock to people graphing these types of data. Isaac, I bet if you had this set up last September, you wouldn't have a mound of data that's not graphed, right? So it's worth that time to set up things like this to be able to keep track of where you are. And then you just print your graphs on a weekly basis. You know, you have 5 graphs that you want to print, boom, 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 boom. Your data are posted and you're ready to go. All right. Any questions about those couple of types of graphs? I don't expect anyone to be, you know, completely fluent in all of these now. I'm still obviously still working through kinks of my own, but I'll get these up there, and I'd love to see you guys to start to use them. All right, cool. School people, let's stay on and talk for a little bit, and everyone else, I'll see you next week.